Bismillah. You ready? Read. Bismillah.
We were
You remember where we stopped?
from the period.
No, we stopped. It is upon them to order upon the two parents to order the young person to pray. See that?
Yes.
All right. Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين ورضي الله عنكم.
وعنكم. Bismillah.
They must tell him to pray when he reaches 7 years of age and to fast as much as he can manage. From the age of 10 onwards, they are to discipline him physically should he neglect these duties. They should.
Allahu Akbar. Um, so he said, Bismillah. So this is in this first phase of the 5 phases, if you will, of the second life, which is the second of 5 lifespans. So in this first phase, which is called tufula in Arabic, or childhood, and that is from birth to puberty, between birth and puberty. They're child during that phase. And he's talking about the responsibilities towards them of their parents. And this is actually a collective obligation for everyone that's aware of the state of the child. So parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings, what have you. It is a collective obligation to order them, to command them to perform salah. So that means that if there's, for example, an 8-year-old child, and everybody, sits around visiting or eating or whatever they're doing and prays, and then that child, prayer time comes and prayer time goes, and nobody told that child, you have to pray now. And that should be a firm order, right? Just like we would order them to do their chores or make their bed or whatever they do. Firmer, but this is what you have to do now. You have to do this now. If prayer time comes and goes and we tell them to pray and they haven't, all of us are sinful. Everyone who's aware of the state of the child that's accountable is sinful for having neglected proper instruction of that child. Telling them, commanding them what their Lord commanded us to tell them. And also they should be ordered with what they're able to of fasting. So fasting, they may not be able to physically endure it. Or they might be able to physically endure some, but not all, especially as they're smaller. And that will differ with respect to the physical constitution of that child and their disposition. People have different metabolisms and so on, different body types. They carry weight different. They digest food different. Some can endure it, some cannot. So notice the order of fasting is if they're as much as they're able, right? A talk, what they can endure. But the order of prayer, they just khalas, you tell them to pray. And they can do it. And if they're, and the aim of this is for them to habituate this very, very important obligation so that when they become mature or when they reach puberty, they're already accustomed to it. They already know how to do it and they're used to it. So they don't neglect it, because that would be very grave if they neglected it after they reach puberty. And then he said, so at 7, which is typically when discrimination occurs, they must be ordered to pray. That's an obligation on us. At 10, if they neglect prayer, they should be disciplined. Like, for example, a spanking. But that must not be something that causes harm. It shouldn't cause harm, and that has to be measured and not result in further stubbornness or driving them away to worse company. And if it gets, and I've never gotten to the point where that was necessary. And if the children are in an environment where everyone prays and they're always accustomed to praying and the whole family is going to pray when it's prayer time, they'll naturally become accustomed to it. You won't have to give very firm discipline for it. And then by the time they're pubescent, khalas, they're fixed up. They're ready to go, inshallah. Naam.
They should prevent him from associating with bad company and people whose dominant state is heedlessness and frivolousness.
Allahu Akbar. Look at that. So they should prevent the parents should prevent them from bad companions and people who their dominant state is heedlessness, not thinking about Allah and the Akhirah and so on, and fudul, which is like idleness, uselessness, busybodiness. Fudul is being a busybody. Like the hadith from the good of a person's Islam is leaving what doesn't concern them. Fudul is what doesn't concern you. It's just extra nonsense, right? And Allahu Akbar. Naam.
Whether they be young or old. They must take even greater care with him as he develops the signs of discernment, and not allow him to say or do anything which is not pleasant and praiseworthy, so that he grows up in this manner.
Allahu Akbar. So when a child is very small, as they get close to discernment or discrimination, which is in Arabic called tamyiz, and the sign of tamyiz is that the child can eat, drink, and do istinja alone. So that's before 10. He's kind of going back, but like a child starts as a little tiny child, they just not aware of anything, right? They're just in la la land. They're in like a dream state, a playful state. But as they mature, and especially these demarcations, if you observe your children, you'll see them very clearly. Like tamyiz will be a clear demarcation. And then at 10 years old, there's a clear additional maturity. And then at puberty, there's a clear difference. If, like some children might have some sort of intellectual deficit or what have you, that's another story. But a typical child that's developing well, these stages are obvious. So as they approach discrimination or discernment, which is tamyiz, there should be increased observation of them, right? And he'll say why. So go ahead. Yep.
Which will make it easy for him to practice them when grown up. For goodness is a habit.
Yeah, and I left that out. Okay, so they shouldn't be allowed to do things except things that are good. So that they grow up like that, right? They do good things. Like we watch their language, how they talk to other kids, how they speak to elders, how they sit, their posture, and so on, and direct them to good behavior. And in classical child development, play is from until 7 years old. And from 7 to 14 is the ta'deeb, is they begin to learn discipline and proper conduct and behavior. And then after that, khalas, that's accountability. That's accountability. The Prophet ﷺ let young men that were like 14 or so participate in war with him. And he might place someone as a commander that was a couple of years older than that. So this thing of what they call adolescence, that is an invention of the modern West. Even in the West, that's an invention. You have, if you like read the biographies of some of the people that had theories that were monumental in modern times, some of them did it at a very young age. Like this idea that you have to act like a juvenile, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. You might see someone 30 years old dressed for play, right? What do you call someone who plays sports? You call them a player. It's a great player. What if you translate that into Arabic? La'ib. There's someone who plays. 30 years old and they're still playing. Dressed like they're playing. Hey, when we're going to be serious? We're going to dress like business or work or uniform or soldierness. You got people running around like big kids, making Coca-Cola and Nike and Adidas and whoever wealthy, but they're just running around like big kids. If you rewind that 200 years, rewind that a couple hundred years to when photography first started going to traditional places. Who do you see running around dressed like a kid? Even the kids are dressed like little adults, right? If it's time to pray, they're in serious prayer clothes, right? If it's time to work, they're in the clothes that are suitable for that profession and that person, place, and time, right? This whole thing of you run around, you call it expressing yourself or being free or just doing it or doing you, and you run around 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, run around like a big kid. And then we say to someone, okay, we need someone to drive the kids to us for a youth thing. Ain't nobody got a license. Don't even, a big kid, I don't even know how to get a license. I don't know how to get a license. I know how to make sure I have a car, how to make sure I have insurance. I want to have sex, but I don't know how to make sure I have a job and make sure I rent a house and make sure the utilities, because I'm a big kid. I'm still playing. I'm still dressed like I'm running around. I'm dressed like someone whose job is running around on a basketball court or a football field getting paid millions for it. But I'm just running around dressed for play. I'm still playing. Right? That's play is from 1 to 7. By the time it's 7 to 14, there's kids. I heard who went to Imam Daw's funeral. That young man and his father studied, and his forefathers were students. He stood up there and recited that Quran from memory like a little man. He's probably 10, 12, 13, 14 years old. That's entirely possible. You got my son-in-law was leading congregations of grown people as a hafid, as a teenager, carrying salah for himself and for tens of other people or hundreds of other people in Ramadan in our sacred month. Young people can do great things, but realize that you're a young adult at that point. You're a young, accountable worshiper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For kids, play is for kids. Play is for kids, right? And even kids, when they hit 7 to this phase, we start watching them more carefully because it's not always about play. So they can start learning life is about this. You know, you get up at this time, you do these chores, you learn this. You have some play because nobody can constantly have work. Even people that are grown can't constantly have work. You have times of rest, but life isn't always just play and doing what you want. So that's 7 to 14. We start to watch them very carefully and keep them away from those that are idle, those that are just running around playing, right? If you're still 30, 40 some years old running around playing, I can't help you much, man. And I just honestly, there's folks I don't want them around the youth. I have to rear because they're still playing, and play. It gets a little ugly. You might be playing at a party, drinking and smoking, and somebody end up dead, or somebody end up catching a case, right? So we want to be serious. Bismillah. Go ahead.
Well, most of the duties connected to this must be performed by parents and other guardians.
So look at this. This is by parents. So at this age, the responsibility on us is to rear them right, right? And that's what? Up to puberty. It's on the parents and everyone that's aware of the state of the child, right? Parents, relatives, what have you, and these are collective obligations. They're fard kifaya for those kids. Naam, go ahead.
It is also important to keep the child away from children of people of no goodness or of bad families, for it has been said that the ruining of children stems mostly from other children.
Allahu Akbar, right? So he says, فَقَدْ كِيلَ أَكْثَرْ فَسَادِ السِّبْيَانِ مِنْ بَعْضِهِمْ لِبَعْضٍ. Right? So we should really watch the company. So we should set a good example, form good habits, and protect them from bad company, right? And unfortunately, some of the bad company nowadays for young people, that you all know, it's in the media they're consuming. So in the past, it might be actually, everybody knows this one kid, like, the family drinks and the kids around drinking and, you know, indecent behavior. So you want to be careful because that child's going to expose the other little kids it plays with to that type of behavior. Like a lot of us that grew up non-Muslim and started experimenting with drinking or other things, that was kids from households where they had access to that, right? You got one friend, their parents let them drink and smoke. So then everybody in the kids, the bad kids want to go hang out at that place, and then they get exposed to those activities. So we want to protect them from that. But then in this age, in your age, people can have that right in their phone. Right in their phone, there might be some sort of advertisement targeting kids for gambling, or targeting kids for vaping, or targeting kids for pornography. You have certain video games where there are predators that are in there. There's a video game, it looks like, or a cartoon, it looks like other little kid characters, but it has types of evil in it that are targeting those young people. So we want to protect them from that. And some of it can be very, very dangerous indeed. And some of it just might be more idle or not as righteous as we want it. But some of it, especially nowadays, the company in this media that we're exposed to, and especially the kids are exposed to before they develop a maturity where they can control certain impulses. It can be very dangerous for them. Yeah. So we want to protect them from that, right? We want to protect them from that, and may Allah grant us that. And also, some of you are elder siblings, right? So you're partly responsible for that. You're partly responsible, and there may be some areas where you're closer to their age and their observation than your parents are. So you should play a role in that. And then as a community, we want the older people in the community, like the older young people, the older young men, and even older children, to help us look after the children and the younger children. No, go ahead.
In the volume on disciplining the soul in the Ihya, the Imam, the Proof of Islam, may God have mercy on him, has written comprehensively about how to discipline children and bring them up well.
Allahu Akbar. So that is Imam al-Ghazali's greatest book, that is called The Revival of the Religious Sciences. It is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4 volumes. It's 4 volumes. In the third volume, he deals with the human soul and its diseases and their cures, and how to discipline the human soul. In that section called Disciplining the Soul, or Riyadatun Nafs, he has a section on disciplining children or child rearing called Riyadatul Sibyan, right? So he's saying that is a sufficient treatment of how child rearing should be accomplished. And that's general, it's principles of child rearing. There are details. And there is a poem and a commentary that we read in Tarim called Riyadatul Sibyan. And it's full of etiquettes for young people. And actually, that's a book we want to read in these sessions. We're going to jump to that when we get proper copies, because some of us, we might not have learned that, and we need to learn that and embody that. And then also, all of us need that responsibility as we eventually have to rear children, and when we're taking care of our younger siblings and fellow students that are younger than us. So we want to we're going to work on that. But that is where that is found. And a translator named Abdulaziz Fredericks, we're looking for his book on it, because he translated Ramli's commentary on Riyadatul Sibyan. We want to use that as a text to go through. And inshallah, maybe we'll add that. Maybe it'll be after Ramadan at this point that we add that. It might take us a minute to collect the books. Bismillah, you can keep going.
This period from birth to puberty is one in which God has lightened the load. For children are not obligated to pray, fast, or perform any other obligation of the Sharia, save what their guardians exhort them to do.
He said, save what their guardian orders them to do. So that's really important, because you can't read this and say, oh, kids don't have to pray. That's not what it's saying. What it is saying is that the commands over them are not characterized by the accountability that the commands over a person who's reached puberty are. So accountability, meaning that I am accountable to Allah to obey His commands and avoid what He has prohibited. That's a personal obligation on me that I am accountable. That is called taklif, right? It could be translated as accountability and reliance of the traveler. It's translated as moral responsibility. Taklif is, in short, al-bulugh wal-aql. And the accountable person is al-baligh al-aql, someone who's reached puberty and possesses sound reason. So child, they haven't reached puberty yet. And even their reason, their aql is still developing. So they are not yet accountable. So we don't call those obligations. However, it's an obligation, a Sharia obligation, an obligation in the sacred law for their parents to order them to do that. And then their parents are ordered to discipline them if they don't do it. So they have to do those things, but we don't say that the sacred law has rendered them accountable for them. We say the sacred law has made their parents accountable, and then they have to obey their parents. Yeah, but it's easier. It's easier, and they're sinless, as will come. Right? They're sinless, and they get good deeds for those things. So, a child prays all their prayers, and they were all accepted. They'll have as many years of prayers from when they were 7 until they reached puberty that were rewarded like sunnahs, right? And then when they reach accountability, they have obligations, so that if they miss it, they're sinful. And that's the next point that's going to come. Yep.
The pen is withheld from recording the deeds of 3 people: a child until he reaches puberty, a sleeper until he wakes, and a madman until he recovers.
Allahu Akbar. So what does that mean? The pen is lifted. The pen of sins. The pen of sins is lifted. Meaning that those people, they don't commit sins. However, the pen of good deeds writes. The pen of good deeds writes, right? But the pen of sins is lifted. And also the other pen that writes is the pen of things that they damage. Like if a child breaks a window, they still owe that. Child has an allowance. They got $100 in the bank account. They break somebody's window, costs $35. Technically, that damage comes out of the child's money, right? But the pen of sins, meaning an angel writing a bad deed when a child misses something that will be obligatory when they're adult, that pen doesn't write. However, the angel writing good deeds for the things that the child does that are obligations when they're adults, those good deeds are written, right? So it's like good with no bad. It's a great opportunity. No, yep.
Hadith. Such is the graciousness, generosity, and gentleness of God.
Allahu Akbar. So He gives people a chance to grow up, a chance to habituate these things. A time when life is more simple. It's more like play. They're kind of in like a dreamy state. The unseen's a little closer for some of them. No. Yep.
Any act of religious observance that a child does before puberty is recorded in his Muslim parents' scrolls. To the extent that they bring him up well and as they should, it is to be hoped that through God's grace they will not be deprived of the reward for his acts of goodness and religious observance after he has reached puberty. But
Allahu
that
Akbar. So He's saying the parents are rewarded as well. And if they raise him well, it's hoped that Allah will reward them for the good deeds a child does as an adult as well. Yep.
but that they will each receive as much reward for them as he does. This is borne out by the hadith where inviting to guidance and guiding to goodness are mentioned, for this is what they will have done. When the child reaches puberty,
We'll
assuming that
stop there. Yeah, we'll stop there. Allahu Akbar. So He's saying that there are hadith that say someone who does good, someone who leads to good is like the performer, right? Someone dal al khair kafa'ilihi. There's numerous hadith that indicate that meaning. So if we say that, if a parent or a teacher, like somebody's teacher teaches them, that would indicate that those hadith would indicate that parent would be rewarded for the good that they taught that child and directed them to. and Allah knows best. So that is the first of 5 spans of the second life. Or it's the first of 5 phases of the second life of 5 lives. And then that brings us where he says, when the child reaches puberty and they possess sound mind or reason, then they're accountable. That's where we're stopping. That begins a second phase that is called what? Youth. And what it is young adulthood. Someone who's accountable now themselves to Allah. It's not this mommy and daddy are accountable to order me. It's I am a young adult that's accountable to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of his commands. All of the commands apply to that person with accountability. And all of the prohibitions speak to them. And hopefully their parents and the people around them did the right thing. So they're already used to those things. It's what they've been doing since they were little, right? So then it's easy to maintain them, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take everyone by the hand, grant us lutf and afiyah, make us pleasing to him, grant us to live our lives in a way that's pleasing to him. And may ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. We ask you, O our Lord, give us from our spouses and our offspring the utmost joy and grant us imams for the people of righteousness. ربنا وجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. رزقنا الصدق والإخلاص والعمل الخالص والرضا وحسن التبعين والرضا وذلك قبل نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. ونكون ثواب هذه الفاتحة لوالدينا ومشايخنا وذوي الحقوق علينا وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. Ameen. Allah yabarak fikum. All right, you all, inshallah, better track down half a saw, then you all have class, inshallah. Subhanallah.